Black cleaning lady was mocked every day, until the day she saved the company. Brenda Johnson woke up every day at 5 in the morning to face another day of humiliation at Progress Business Consulting Firm in downtown New York City. For 15 years she had worked cleaning the offices, always silent, always invisible to the executives who moved through the marble hallways as if she were just part of the furniture. That Monday in March, as soon as she arrived on the 32nd floor of the commercial building, Brenda already knew it would be a difficult day. Richard Thompson, the operations manager, had been in a bad mood since early morning, throwing papers on the floor on purpose just to watch her bend down and pick them up with her already tired hands from so much work. "Hey, Brenda," shouted Richard from the other side of the hallway. "Look at the mess you left here yesterday." She knew she hadn't left any mess. Her work had always been impeccable, but she had learned over the years that it was better not to argue. She needed that job to keep her 17-year-old daughter Emily in the private school where she studied with a full scholarship. "Sorry, Mr. Richard, I'll clean it right now," she replied softly, grabbing the cloth and the broom. "That's how it has to be. If you don't have the skills, you have to have humility," he said, laughing as some fellow executives passed by in the hallway. Brenda felt her face burn with shame, but she lowered her head and began to clean the floor he had dirtied on purpose. It was always like this. Every day the same routine of disrespect, the same looks of disdain, the same mean jokes they made when they thought she wasn't listening. While cleaning, she couldn't stop thinking about the conversation she had had with Emily the night before. Her daughter had come home excited, talking about the law school she wanted to attend the following year. "Mom, can you imagine? Me, a lawyer, defending people like us who have always been stepped on," said Emily, her eyes shining with hope. Brenda smiled, but inside she felt a tightness in her chest. How was she going to pay for a private college on a cleaning lady's salary? The high school scholarship was already a miracle, but college was a completely different story. "Of course, honey. We'll figure it out," she had lied, not wanting to clip the wings of the girl's dreams. Now wiping the cold office floor, Brenda thought about how many extra hours she would need to work, how many more weekends she would have to work to save up enough money. Maybe she could get another job early in the morning somewhere else. "Brenda!" Richard's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. "When you're done there, go to Mr. Frank's office. He wants you to clean everything before the 10 o'clock meeting." Frank Progress was the son of the company owner, a 35-year-old man who had just been promoted to financial director. Unlike his father, Edward Progress, who had always been respectful to all employees, Frank treated the general services workers as if they were less than nothing. Brenda gathered her cleaning supplies and walked to Frank's office. Through the glass, she could see him typing something on the computer with a tense expression on his face. She knocked lightly on the door. "Come in quickly, I don't have time to waste," said Frank without even looking up from the screen. She entered silently and began cleaning the shelves of law books. Frank's office was luxurious, with imported furniture, expensive paintings, and a privileged view of the city. It contrasted brutally with the simple two-room apartment where Brenda lived with her daughter in the South Bronx neighborhood. While cleaning, she couldn't help but notice that Frank seemed extremely nervous. His hands trembled slightly as he typed, and he kept looking at the door as if he were afraid of someone coming in. "You can start by emptying the trash can," he said, quickly closing his computer screen. Brenda approached the trash can and was surprised by the amount of torn papers inside. Normally, executives threw away very little paper, since almost everything was digital. But Frank's trash can was overflowing with documents torn into very small pieces, as if someone had been very careful to ensure they couldn't be read. "Quickly," said Frank, seeing her hesitate to empty the trash can. "I have an important meeting now." "Yes, sir," replied Brenda, dumping the papers into her trash cart. As she was leaving the room, she heard Frank making a phone call. Although it wasn't in her nature to snoop, something in the desperate tone of his voice caught her attention. "Yeah, I know it's tough. But you have to understand, I can't do anything more right now. If they find out, we're finished," Frank was saying in a low voice. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Brenda pretended to be organizing the cleaning supplies outside the room but kept listening. There was something strange about that conversation that awakened a protective instinct she didn't even know she had. "No, you can't cancel now. Look, I'll get more time, but you can't abandon ship like this," Frank continued, his voice growing louder and more desperate. The call was abruptly cut off when Edward Progress, the company owner, appeared in the hallway, walking toward his son's office. Frank quickly hung up the phone and tried to compose a natural expression. "Good morning, Father," said Frank, forcing a smile as Edward entered the room. "Good morning, son. How are the company's numbers?" "I need an updated report for the meeting with the partners," said Edward, a 62-year-old man with graying hair and an elegant posture that commanded respect. "Everything's under control. The numbers are good," replied Frank, but Brenda noticed a hesitation in his voice. "Great, then I'll see you at the 10 o'clock meeting. And Frank." Edward stopped at the door and looked directly into his son's eyes. "I hope you're telling me the truth. This company is the work of my entire life." Brenda continued cleaning the hallway but noticed that Frank turned extremely pale after his father left. He quickly returned to his computer and began typing furiously, his hands visibly trembling. 2 hours later, while Brenda was cleaning the executive floor's bathroom, she heard a heated argument coming from the meeting room. The voices were loud enough for her to make out some words. "What do you mean the numbers don't add up?" It was Edward's voice, clearly upset. "Mr. Progress, according to our preliminary audit, there is a significant discrepancy between the original contracts and the values being reported," said a female voice that Brenda didn't recognize. "That's impossible." "Frank, can you explain this?" asked Edward. There was a long silence before Frank replied, "It must be some error in the system. I'll check and bring the correct data tomorrow." "Frank, this can't wait until tomorrow. Our biggest client is threatening to cancel the contract over suspicions of irregularities. If this is true," Edward's voice was filled with worry and disappointment. Brenda felt a chill. There were 500 employees at that company, including dozens of people like her who depended on those jobs to survive. If the company closed, it would be a tragedy for many families. When the meeting ended, she saw Frank leaving the room with a red, sweaty face. He quickly walked to his office and slammed the door shut. Minutes later, Brenda heard the sound of papers being violently torn. That afternoon, while cleaning the empty offices during lunch hour, Brenda couldn't get the conversation she had overheard out of her head. Something was very wrong at the company, and she had a strange feeling that Frank was at the center of it all. When she arrived at his office for the afternoon cleaning, she found the trash can again full of shredded papers. This time, her curiosity overcame her caution. She looked around to make sure she was alone and examined some of the paper fragments. Most of the pieces were too small for her to read anything, but she could make out some numbers and isolated words. There were references to amounts in dollars, some figures that seemed too high for normal contracts, and what appeared to be part of a company name she had never heard of. "What are you doing?" Frank's voice behind her made her jump. She hadn't heard him enter the room. "Sorry, sir. I was just cleaning the trash can," said Brenda, trying to hide her nervousness. "Cleaning or snooping?" asked Frank, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Just cleaning, sir. Sorry if I took too long," she replied, quickly dumping the papers into the trash cart. Frank watched her for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. "Next time, be faster." And Brenda. He said her name in a way she had never heard before, laden with threat. "It would be good if you just focused on your work, understood?" "Yes, sir." "Great, now get out of here." Brenda left the room with her heart racing. Something was definitely wrong, and now Frank knew she had noticed. This was dangerous, very dangerous. At the end of that day, when she was putting away the cleaning supplies in the basement storage room, she ran into Mrs. Dorothy, a 68-year-old woman who had worked the night cleaning shift for over 20 years. "Hi, Dottie. How are you?" asked Brenda, genuinely interested in the answer. Mrs. E. Dorothy was one of the few people at the company who had always been kind to Brenda. They had known each other since Brenda started working there, and Dorothy had always been like a mother to her. "Oh dear, I'm worried. Have you heard the rumors?" said Dorothy, her voice filled with anxiety. "What rumors?" "They're saying the company might close. that there's something wrong with the accounts. Imagine, Brenda, what will happen to us? At my age, who's going to hire me? Brenda felt her stomach churn. If Dorothy's suspicions were confirmed, dozens of families would lose their livelihood overnight. Dottie, you work at night, right? Have you noticed if anyone stays working very late? Oh, yes. Frank is almost always here when I arrive at 10 at night. He's often in his office on the computer making calls. Sometimes I hear him arguing on the phone. Arguing about what? Dorothy looked around to make sure they were alone. Look, Brenda, I don't like to gossip, but there's something strange. Once I heard him talking about transferring money, about accounts in other names, and there's more. What? He always shreds a lot of papers. Every Friday his trash can is clogged with shredded documents. It's strange because the other executives hardly use paper. Brenda felt a chill in her stomach. Her suspicions were being confirmed. Dottie, do you think that— I don't think anything, dear, Dorothy interrupted quickly. And neither should you. We're paid to clean, not to think. The less we know, the better for us. But Brenda couldn't follow Dorothy's advice. That night at home, while helping Emily with her math homework, her mind wouldn't stop processing all the information she had gathered during the day. Mom, are you okay? Asked Emily, noticing her mother was distracted. I am, dear. It's just work stuff. Problems at the firm? Brenda hesitated. She didn't want to worry Emily, but she couldn't lie to her daughter either. Maybe. Nothing you need to worry about right now. Mum, if you lose your job, we'll figure it out. I can get a part-time job to help. Absolutely not, Emily. Your studies are the priority. We've always managed and we'll keep managing. But as she said these words, Brenda felt the weight of responsibility growing on her shoulders. If the firm was really in trouble because of something Frank was doing, she couldn't just stand by and watch. The next morning, Tuesday, Brenda arrived at work with a different determination. She had spent the night thinking and reached a conclusion. If Frank was harming the firm, it would affect not just her but hundreds of families. She needed to find out the truth. During her morning cleaning, she paid more attention to details. She noticed that Frank always arrived very early, before 7 in the morning, when almost no other executives were in the building. She also noticed that he always locked his desk drawer when he left the room, something the other directors didn't do. Around 10 in the morning, while cleaning the hallway near Edward's office, she overheard a phone conversation that made her stop breathing. Yes, Mr. Edward, I understand your concern, but without a formal investigation, our hands are tied, said a male voice inside the room. But you don't understand, Dr. Williams. This firm employs 500 families. If there are irregularities, I need to know now before it's too late, Edward replied, his voice filled with desperation. Mr. Progress, a full audit takes time. We're talking about 15 years of financial records. But I can tell you we've found some concerning discrepancies. What kind of discrepancies? There was a long pause before the answer. Contracts with different amounts between the original versions and the processed ones. Transfers to companies we can't locate, and, well, it all seems to have started about 5 years ago. Brenda felt as if the floor had vanished beneath her feet. 5 years. That was exactly when Frank took on a position of greater responsibility at the firm, when his father started trusting him more with the finances. Dr. Williams, I need you to be straight with me. Do you suspect my son? The question hung in the air for several seconds. Brenda held her breath, leaning against the hallway wall. Mr. Progress, I've been an accountant for 30 years, and in my experience, when there are irregularities like this, there's usually someone with privileged access involved. I'm not accusing anyone, but I understand, Edward interrupted, his voice sounding broken. Continue the investigation, and Dr. Williams, please be discreet. If my son is involved, I need to handle this the right way. Brenda quickly moved away from the hallway when she heard footsteps approaching the door. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure someone could hear it. The situation was much worse than she had imagined. Edward already suspected his own son. Later in the morning, while cleaning the women's restroom, she ran into Melissa Baker, Edward's personal secretary. Melissa had always been one of the few people on the executive floor who treated Brenda with respect and kindness. "Good morning, Brenda. How are you?" said Melissa, washing her hands at the sink. "Good morning, Miss Melissa. I'm fine, thank you." "That's good. And your daughter? How are her studies going?" "Going well. She's in her last year of high school, wants to study law in college." "How wonderful. I'm sure she'll make it. A smart girl like her." Brenda hesitated for a moment, then decided to take a chance. "Mrs. Melissa, may I ask a question?" "Of course, go ahead." "Is something going on at the company? People are saying there might be trouble." Melissa looked around to make sure they were alone. "Look, Brenda, I shouldn't be talking about this, but yes, there are some concerns. Mr. Edward has been very stressed lately. He's ordered a complete audit of the company." "Audit?" "That's when outside accountants come to check if everything is right with the company's money. To tell you the truth, I'm worried too. If they find something wrong, what could happen? In the worst case, the company might have to close, or at least lay off a lot of people." Brenda felt her stomach sink. "Mrs. Melissa, can I trust you?" "Of course, Brenda. What's going on?" I've been seeing some strange things. Frank has been very nervous, shredding lots of documents, making suspicious calls." Melissa stopped drying her hands and looked directly at Brenda. "Brenda, this is very serious. Are you sure about what you're saying?" "I know I'm just a cleaner, and maybe I shouldn't get involved in this, but Mrs. Melissa, if someone is stealing from the company, it's going to hurt a lot of innocent people." "You're right. Brenda, Mr. Edward is a fair man. If you have information that could help, you should talk to him. But will he listen to me? You're a human being, Brenda. And if you're telling the truth, your observations could save this company. I can arrange a meeting with him for you if you want." Brenda felt a mix of fear and hope. It was risky, very risky. But maybe it was the only chance to make a difference. "Okay, but can it be without anyone knowing?" "Leave it to me. I'll talk to him." That afternoon, Brenda worked with growing anxiety. Every time she saw Frank in the hallway, she felt as if he could read her thoughts. Around 3 o'clock, Melissa approached her discreetly while she was cleaning the reception area. "Brenda, Mr. Edward can see you at 5:30 after most people have left. It'll be discreet." "Thank you, Mrs. Melissa. I hope I'm doing the right thing." "I'm sure you are." The next 2 hours felt like an eternity. Brenda mentally reviewed everything she had observed, trying to organize the information in a way that made sense. By 5:15, most employees had already left, and the hallways were almost empty. Melissa came to get her from the supply room and led her to Edward Progress's office. Brenda had never been in his office before, and she was impressed by the elegance of the surroundings. There were family photos on the walls, diplomas and certifications, and a magnificent view of the city. "Brenda, welcome. Please have a seat," said Edward, pointing to a comfortable armchair in front of his desk. It was the first time an executive had asked her to sit like a regular visitor. Whenever she had to speak with any boss, she would stand with her head down. "Thank you, sir," she said, still unsure how to act. "Melissa told me you have some concerns about the company. You can speak freely, it's just the three of us here." Brenda took a deep breath and began to report everything she had observed. Frank's suspicious calls, the excessive shredding of papers, the nervousness, the conversations about money transfers. Edward listened to her in silence, taking notes on a notepad. "Brenda, these are very serious observations. Are you certain about what you're telling me?" "Mr. Edward, I've worked here for 15 years. I know the normal office routine. What's happening with your son isn't normal. You understand you're talking about my son?" "I do, yes. And I know it's difficult for you. But I also know that you are a fair man and that this company employs hundreds of people. If someone is harming the company, it will affect many innocent families." Edward remained silent for a long moment, looking out the window. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with emotion. "Brenda, you are a brave person. It couldn't have been easy coming here today." "It really wasn't, but it was the right thing to do." "I will take your observations very seriously. The audit is already underway, and your information could help the auditors focus on the right areas. Can I count on you to let me know if you notice anything else unusual?" "Of course, Mr. Edward. And Brenda." He looked her in the eyes. "Regardless of what we find, I want you to know that your job is secure. I need honest people like you in this company." Brenda felt her eyes well up. In 15 years, it was the first time someone in the company had spoken about her integrity. "Thank you, sir. Thank you very much." When she left Edward's office, Brenda felt a mix of relief and apprehension. She had done what she thought was right, but now the most dangerous phase was beginning. If Frank found out she had spoken to his father. The next morning, Wednesday, the atmosphere in the company was noticeably tense. There were two men in suits whom Brenda didn't know walking around the offices with briefcases and laptops. The auditors had arrived. Frank was visibly nervous. Brenda watched him all morning, noticing that he was sweating excessively and constantly looking at the door whenever the auditors passed near his office. Around 11 in the morning, she saw Frank make a desperate call. "Yeah, I know it's risky, but we have no choice. They're investigating everything. You need to do that thing we talked about. Yes, now." The call lasted only a few minutes but left Frank even more agitated. He began frantically opening drawers, searching for something. When he found what he was looking for, a yellow folder, he quickly left the room heading toward the elevators. Brenda pretended to be cleaning the hallway, but discreetly followed Frank. He went to the underground parking lot and headed to his car, a dark blue Lexus. She saw him open the trunk and stash the yellow folder under the spare tire. When Frank returned to the office 20 minutes later, Brenda noticed he seemed a bit calmer. But that calm didn't last long. In the middle of the afternoon, the auditors specifically asked to examine Frank's personal files. "Mr. Frank, we need to verify some specific transactions. Could you show us the original contracts for clients Baker and Associates and Metropolitan Construction?" asked one of the auditors. Frank turned pale. "Of course, but those files are being reorganized. Can I bring them tomorrow?" "We'd prefer to see them today, if possible. They're crucial information for our investigation." Let me check exactly where they are." Brenda realized Frank was stalling. He knew exactly where those contracts were, and he had hidden something in the car for a reason. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. That afternoon, after Frank left early claiming a family emergency, Brenda made a risky decision. She went down to the parking lot during her lunch break and approached Frank's blue Lexus. The car was locked, obviously, but she could see there was something in the trunk. She watched for a few minutes, trying to decide whether she should tell someone about what she saw. She was so focused that she didn't notice Melissa approaching. "Brenda, what are you doing here?" "Mrs. Melissa." Brenda was startled. I saw Frank hide something in his car this morning. A yellow folder." "Really? What time?" "Right after the auditors asked to see some specific contracts. He got nervous and rushed out here." Melissa looked around to make sure they were alone. "Brenda, this could be very important. I'm going to speak with Mr. Edward. But how will he manage to see what's in the car? Frank has the keys. Leave that to us. Mr. Edward has rights as the owner of the company, especially if there's suspicion of wrongdoing." An hour later, Brenda saw Edward heading down to the parking lot, accompanied by one of the auditors and a technician she didn't know. They went straight to Frank's blue Lexus. The technician used some special tools to open the trunk, while Edward watched with a pained expression on his face. It was clear that this was breaking the father's heart. When they found the yellow folder, the auditor quickly examined it and made a serious face. He nodded to Edward, confirming that he had found something important. 20 minutes later, Brenda saw Frank returning to the office. He went straight to the elevator, but was intercepted by Edward and the auditors on the ground floor. "Frank, I need to speak with you." "Now," said Edward, his authoritative voice echoing in the marble lobby. "Dad, I can explain." "In my office. Immediately." Brenda watched them enter the executive elevator. Frank's face was completely white, while Edward seemed to have aged 10 years in one day. 2 hours later, the news spread through the halls like wildfire. Frank had been removed from the company, and a formal investigation was being initiated. Rumors ran rampant among the employees, each one more frightening than the last. Brenda learned the details through Melissa, who called her for a private conversation at the end of the day. "Brenda, I wanted you to know that your information was crucial. The auditors found evidence that Frank had been embezzling money for at least 3 years. What do you mean? He created fake companies and was overbilling contracts. The difference went to his personal accounts. It's millions of dollars, Brenda. Enough to bankrupt the company. My God, and now? Mr. Edward is devastated, as you can imagine, but he's also determined to recover the money and save the company. He wants to speak with you tomorrow. With me? Why? Because you were the person who had the courage to speak the truth. If it weren't for you, we might have found out too late. That night, Brenda came home emotionally exhausted. Emily immediately noticed something was wrong. Mom, you seem off. What happened at work? Brenda told her daughter a summarized version of the events. Emily listened to her in silence, her eyes growing with admiration. Mom, you were amazing. Imagine if the company had closed because of that bad man. I just did what I thought was right, honey. No, Mom. You did much more than that. You were brave. You showed that no matter what your job is, what matters is a person's character. Brenda hugged her daughter, feeling a pride in herself that she hadn't felt in years. The next morning, Thursday, Brenda was called again to Edward's office. This time he wasn't alone. There was an elegant woman around 50 years old whom she didn't know. Brenda, this is Dr. Helen Reynolds, our new Director of Compliance and Internal Audit. From now on, she will be responsible for ensuring that nothing like this happens again. Brenda, it's a pleasure to meet you, said Dr. Helen, extending her hand. Mr. Edward told me about your integrity and courage. I want to make a proposal to you. A proposal? We are creating a new internal control department. We need observant, honest people who know the company from the bottom up. People who aren't afraid to speak the truth. Would you like to be part of this team? Brenda was speechless. I don't have a college degree. We'll provide the necessary training, and if you want, the company can help you get a college education. What matters are the qualities you've already shown you have. What exactly would my role be? You'd be responsible for observing irregularities, suspicious reports, behavior that's out of the ordinary. You'd be like the eyes and ears of the company's integrity. And the salary? 3 times what you're currently earning, plus executive-level benefits. Brenda felt like she was dreaming. Can I think about it? Of course, but don't take too long, said Edward with a smile. We need you. During lunch, Brenda called Emily to tell her about the offer. Mom, that's amazing. You're going to accept, right? It's a huge responsibility, Emily. What if I can't handle it? Mom, you just saved an entire company. If you can handle that, I don't know what else you could handle. And what about you? How will you manage with my schedule changing? Mom, for the first time in our lives, we won't have to worry about money. I can go to any college I want. You deserve this opportunity. That afternoon, Brenda went to see Edward. Mr. Edward, I accept the offer, but I want to continue being the same person I've always been. It's precisely because you are that person that we're making this offer, Brenda. The transition wasn't immediate. Brenda spent 2 weeks training with Dr. Helen, learning about auditing, compliance, and corporate procedures. She also started studying at night to finish high school, which she had dropped out of when she became pregnant with Emily. But the challenges didn't end with the promotion. Frank had been removed, but the embezzled money hadn't been recovered. The company still faced severe financial difficulties, and some important clients were considering cancelling contracts due to the distrust generated by the scandal. 3 weeks after her promotion, Brenda was in her new office, a small room but with a window and a view of the city, when Melissa appeared with a worried expression. Brenda, Mr. Edward needs to speak with you. It's urgent. What happened? Metropolitan Construction cancelled the contract. It's the 3rd major client to cancel this week. If this continues... Brenda followed Melissa to Edward's office. He looked visibly dejected, seeming to have aged even more in recent weeks. Brenda, have a seat. I have bad news. About the company? Yes. Even though we uncovered Frank's scheme, the damage was already done. We've lost several clients, and the money he embezzled, well, it's in offshore accounts that could take years to recover. What does that mean? It means we're going to have to make drastic restructuring, staff cuts, salary reductions, maybe even selling part of the company. Brenda felt her stomach sink. After everything that had happened, the company still might not survive. "Mr. Edward, what's the real situation? How much time do we have? If we can't regain client trust and stabilize our finances within 2 months, we'll have to close our doors. And is there anything we can do?" Edward sighed deeply. "I'm trying everything. Renegotiating with suppliers, cutting costs, looking for new investors. But the company's reputation has been badly damaged." That night, Brenda couldn't sleep. She lay thinking about all the employees who would lose their jobs, all the families that would be affected. She had saved the company from Frank, but that might not be enough. The next day, Friday, she had an idea. During lunch, she went looking for Mrs. Dorothy. "Dottie, can I ask you something? In your 20 years here, have you seen other crises?" "Oh yes, dear, there have been some tough times, but never like this, so serious." "And how did the company overcome the other crises?" "Well, Mr. Edward has always been very close to the employees. He knows everyone by name, knows each family's story. The employees have always trusted him. And the clients, what do they value most about the company?" Dorothy thought for a moment. "You know, Brenda, the long-time clients always talk about Mr. Edward's honesty, that he never tried to cheat anyone, always delivered what he promised. I think that's why they were so shocked by what Frank did." This conversation gave Brenda an idea. During the afternoon, she sought out Dr. Helen. "Dr. Helen, may I suggest a strategy?" "Of course, Brenda, we're open to any ideas. What if we did a campaign of total transparency? Show the clients exactly what we found, how we fixed it, and what we're doing to make sure it never happens again." "Go on." "We can invite the clients to see our new procedures, show the audit system we implemented. Be completely open about the problems and the solutions." Helen noted down the suggestions. "It's an interesting idea, but risky. What if the clients become even more suspicious?" "Doctor, in my experience, people value honesty. If we try to hide or downplay what happened, they'll be more suspicious. But if we're completely transparent..." "I'll talk to Mr. Edward about this." 2 hours later, Brenda was called back to Edward's office. This time he seemed more upbeat. "Brenda, Dr. Helen told me about your idea. It's bold, but it might work. Would you be willing to help implement this strategy?" "How so?" "You would be part of the presentation to the clients. You'd tell your story, how you discovered the problem, how we acted to correct it. You'd be the living example that the company values integrity." "Me? Speak to important business people?" "Brenda, you've already proven you have wisdom and courage. And more importantly, you have credibility. No one can question your motives or your honesty." Brenda felt nervous, but also excited. "When would this be?" "Next week. We're going to organize individual presentations for each of our main clients." The following week was intense. Brenda worked with Helen and a communications consultant to prepare her presentation. She would tell her story in a simple and direct way, explaining how she noticed the irregularities and why she decided to speak up. The first presentation was on Tuesday for the partners of Baker and Associates, a law firm that had been a client for over 10 years. "Gentlemen, before we begin the technical presentation, I'd like you to meet the person responsible for discovering and reporting the scheme that harmed our company," said Edward, introducing Brenda. She was nervous, but remembered the advice Emily had given her the night before. "Mum, just be yourself. Tell the truth from your heart." "Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Brenda Johnson. I worked 15 years as a cleaner in this company and was recently promoted to the compliance department." She told her story with simplicity and sincerity, explaining how she noticed Frank's suspicious behaviors and why she decided to speak up, even knowing the risks. "Gentlemen, I don't have a college degree. I don't understand complex laws or finances. But I understand honest work and family. When I saw that someone was harming this company, I knew it would affect hundreds of working families. I couldn't stay silent." When she finished, there was silence in the room. Then Dr. Baker, the managing partner of the firm, started to applaud. "Mrs. Brenda, in 25 years of legal practice, I've rarely seen such a clear example of integrity and courage. If this company has employees like you, it certainly deserves our trust. The meeting ended with Baker and Associates not only keeping the contract, but expanding the services hired. The following presentations had similar results. Brenda's story touched the business people in a way that technical reports couldn't. They saw in her proof that the company truly valued integrity. In 2 weeks, 5 of the 6 clients who had cancelled contracts returned. The company not only survived the crisis, but gained an even greater reputation for reliability. A month later, Edward called Brenda for a conversation. "Brenda, I want to make another proposal to you." "Another promotion?" "Actually, a study opportunity. The company wants to sponsor your college education. Business administration, accounting, law, whatever course you choose." "Really? More than that, we want you to become our Director of Ethics and Compliance, but for that you need the formal education." "And while I study?" "You continue working part-time with full salary, and when you graduate you take over the directorship." Brenda felt her eyes welling up. "Mr. Edward, when I started working here, I just wanted a job to support my daughter. I never imagined—" "Brenda, you saved this company. But more than that, you showed all of us what really matters. Character, courage, and doing what's right even when it's hard." 2 years later, Brenda graduated in business administration with a specialization in auditing. Emily was in the audience on graduation day, crying with pride for the mother who had become her hero. "Mom, remember when you said I was going to be a lawyer?" said Emily during the graduation party. "Of course I remember." "Well, I changed my mind. I want to study business administration too. I want to work with you, learn to be as honest as you." "Emily, you are already honest. You always have been." "I learned from the best teacher." The Progress business consulting firm not only survived Frank's scandal, but became a benchmark for transparency and corporate ethics. Brenda, as Director of Ethics and Compliance, implemented programs that were copied by other companies. Frank was sentenced to 5 years in prison and required to repay all the embezzled money. Part of these funds was used to create a scholarship fund for employees' children, which was named the Brenda Johnson Education and Values Program. 5 years after everything began, Brenda was in her office, now on the executive floor, with an even more beautiful view of the city, when she received an unexpected visit. It was Richard Thompson, the former manager who used to humiliate her. "Brenda." "Mrs. Brenda," he corrected himself. "May I come in?" "Of course, Richard. How can I help you?" He seemed ashamed, looking at the floor. I came to apologize for the way I treated you. It was wrong, and I knew it was wrong." "Richard, that's in the past." "No, it's not. I lost my job here because of my behavior. And since then, I've been trying to find another job. In interviews, they always ask why I left Progress, and I can't explain without admitting how I treated my colleagues." Brenda observed him for a moment. He truly seemed remorseful. "What do you want from me, Richard?" "A second chance, not a job. I know I don't deserve that, but a recommendation. A chance to show that I've changed." "Why should I trust you?" "Because you are the most honest person I know. If you say I deserve a second chance, maybe someone will believe me." Brenda thought for a long moment. Then she took a piece of paper and began to write. "Richard, I'll give you a letter of recommendation. But I will be honest about the past and why I believe you can change. It's up to you to prove you've really changed." "Thank you, Mrs. Brenda. Thank you very much." When Richard left, Brenda looked out the window and reflected on the incredible journey she had lived. From a humiliated cleaner to a respected director, from a mother worried about her daughter's future to a mentor for a new generation of ethical professionals. At that moment, Melissa knocked on the door. "Brenda, there's a letter for you, from the state government." Brenda opened the letter and read it with growing surprise. "Melissa, I've been nominated for the State Award for Integrity and Citizenship. How wonderful, you deserve it. But I haven't done anything extraordinary. I just did what I thought was right." "Brenda, sometimes doing what's right is the most extraordinary thing someone can do." On the night of the award ceremony, Brenda was on stage at Lincoln Center, receiving the award from the governor. In the audience were Emily, Mrs. Dorothy, Melissa, Dr. Helen, and dozens of colleagues from Progress Business Consulting. "Ladies and gentlemen," Brenda said into the microphone. "When I started working as a cleaner, my biggest dream was to be able to pay for my daughter's education. I never imagined I would be here, receiving this incredible award. But I want to say something important. Integrity is not a privilege for those with formal education or social status. Integrity is a choice that all of us can make, every day, regardless of our job or our situation in life. For 15 years, I was just a cleaner, but it was exactly that position that allowed me to see what others didn't see, hear what others didn't hear. There is no small job or insignificant person. We all have the power to make a difference. This award isn't just mine. It belongs to all honest workers, to all mothers fighting for their children, to all people who believe that doing what's right is worth it even when it's hard." The audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Brenda looked at Emily in the audience and saw she was crying with pride. After the ceremony, during the party, Edward approached Brenda. "Brenda, I have one last proposal for you. Mr. Edward, you've already done so much for me. Actually, it's you who has done so much for us. I want you to become a partner in the firm. 20% of progress would be yours." Brenda was speechless. I can't accept this." "Why not?" "It's too much. Way too much. Brenda, you saved this company. More than that, you transformed our culture, our reputation. The company is now worth 3 times what it was before the crisis. You deserve to share in this success." "But I don't have the money to buy." "You don't need to buy anything. It's recognition for what you've done and continue to do." 3 months later, Brenda Johnson was officially listed as partner director of Progress Business Consulting Firm. The company had become the most respected in the sector in New York City, known not only for the quality of its services, but mainly for the integrity of its practices. Emily, now in her 2nd year of business administration, was interning at the company and already demonstrated the same ethical values as her mother. She had created a social project that brought financial education to underprivileged communities, teaching families how to manage their resources and plan for the future. "Mom, remember when you used to tell me that honesty was the most valuable asset a person could have?" Emily asked during a family lunch. "Yes, I remember. At the time I thought it was kind of cliché, but now I understand. Your integrity didn't just change our lives. It changed hundreds of people's lives. Emily, integrity isn't something we have. It's something we practice every day in every choice we make." 10 years after uncovering Frank's scheme, Brenda was in her office reviewing the company's annual reports when her phone rang. "Hello? Brenda, this is Dr. Williams from the court." "Hi, Dr. Williams. How can I help you?" "Brenda, Frank's trial has concluded. He was sentenced to repay all remaining money and serve 2 additional years of community service. But he specifically asked to speak with you." "With me? Why?" "He said he wants to apologize personally." Brenda hesitated. After all these years, she didn't feel anger toward Frank. In fact, she felt sorry for him. He had lost everything: family, career, reputation, because of greed. "All right, I can speak with him." A week later, Brenda was in a room at the courthouse, waiting for Frank to arrive. When he entered, she barely recognized him. The arrogant, well-dressed man had become thin, downcast, wearing simple clothes. "Brenda, thank you for agreeing to see me." "You're welcome, Frank." They sat facing each other, an uncomfortable silence hanging in the air. "Brenda, I need to apologize. Not just for what I did to the company, but for the way I always treated you. For the disrespect, the arrogance. Frank, I forgave you a long time ago." "How? How can you forgive someone who—" "Because holding on to anger only hurts the one who holds it. And because I believe people can change." Frank began to cry. "Brenda, I lost everything. My father never spoke to me again. My wife left me. My children are ashamed of me. And the worst part is, I deserve all of it." "Frank, you made serious mistakes. But that doesn't mean your life is over. You can rebuild. You can redeem yourself." "How? Who will trust me now?" "Start small. Work honestly, even in simple tasks. Prove to yourself that you can be a person of integrity. Over time, others will see that change." Would you consider giving me a job recommendation? Brenda thought for a moment. Frank, when you're released, come see me. If you've truly changed, if you're willing to work honestly in any role, we'll talk. You'd do that for me? After everything? Frank, I believe in redemption. We all deserve a second chance, as long as we're willing to earn it. 2 years later, Frank Progress was working as an office assistant at a small accounting firm. He had reached out to Brenda as promised, and she had agreed to give him an opportunity, but at a partner company, not at Progress. He worked hard, was punctual, respectful to all his colleagues. Slowly, he was rebuilding his reputation and his self-esteem. He was still paying for past mistakes, but now he did so with dignity. Brenda received regular reports about Frank's performance. She believed in second chances, but not in naivety. Frank needed to consistently prove he had changed. On a Friday afternoon, Brenda was wrapping up work when Emily entered her office. "Mom, I have some news." "What news?" "I received a job offer at a consulting firm in London." Brenda felt her heart tighten. Emily had become an exceptional professional, and it was natural for her to receive tempting offers. "London, that's very far." "Yeah, Mom, but it's an incredible opportunity. They want me to lead a corporate ethics project for European companies. And do you want to go?" "Mom, I learned everything I know about integrity and leadership by watching you. Now I want to take those values to other places, help other companies become more ethical." Brenda smiled, proud and sad at the same time. "Emily, you should follow your path. It's always been my dream to see you soar." "You don't want me to go." "I want you to be happy and achieve your dreams. If that means going to London, then go with my blessing." "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for teaching me that the most important thing in life isn't where we end up, but how we get there." 6 months later, Brenda was at JFK Airport saying goodbye to Emily. "Mom, take care of yourself and keep changing lives here." "You too, my daughter. Show the world out there what a woman of integrity from the United States is capable of. I learned from the best." They hugged for a long time. Brenda watched Emily bored with tears in her eyes, but her heart full of pride. On the way back home, Brenda reflected on her journey, from a cleaner to a businesswoman, from a humiliated woman to an example of integrity. But she knew that the most important thing wasn't the titles or awards she had received. The most important thing was the lives she had touched, the people she had inspired to do what was right. Arriving home, she found a letter in the mailbox. It was from a young business administration student from a public university. "Dear Mrs. Brenda, my name is Mary. I'm a business administration student at Columbia University. I attended your lecture on business ethics at college and was very inspired. I come from a humble family, my parents are cleaners, and I've always felt intimidated in the course, as if I didn't belong there. Your story showed me that it doesn't matter where we come from, but our character and determination. Thank you for being an example for people like me." Brenda smiled, carefully putting the letter away. These messages arrived regularly from young people across the country who had heard her story and felt inspired to pursue their dreams with integrity. At the end of that year, Fortune magazine included Brenda in the list of the 50 most influential women in the United States. The cover story recounted her journey and highlighted how she had transformed not just a company, but an entire discussion about ethics in the corporate world. Brenda Johnson proves that leadership isn't about position or academic background, but about character and courage, the magazine's editorial said. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. At the Progress Business Consulting firm's year-end party, Brenda was called to the stage to give the traditional speech. Looking at the 400 employees present, she saw faces of people of all ages, backgrounds, and positions in the company. "Colleagues and friends," she began, "when I think about the last 15 years, I'm moved by the journey we've lived together. This company has become much more than a workplace. It has become a family united by common values. But I want to make one thing clear. What happened here wasn't a miracle. It was the result of ordinary people making the right choices. Each one of you in your role has the power to make a difference. It doesn't matter if you're a cleaner, manager, director, or intern. What matters is how you treat people, how you do your job, if you have the courage to speak up when you see something wrong. Our success isn't measured only by the profits or awards we receive. It's measured by the family we've built, the values we practice, the lives we've transformed. The audience rose in a warm ovation. After the speech, Mrs. Dorothy, now retired but present at the party as a special guest, approached Brenda. "Brenda, my dear, do you remember what I told you that day, so many years ago, that it was better not to get involved, not to think too much?" "I do remember, Dottie." "Well, I was completely wrong. Thank you for not listening to me. Thank you for thinking, for getting involved, for saving all of us. Dottie, you were important too. If it weren't for the information you gave me—" "No, dear, I gave you information, but you were the one who had the courage to act. That's the difference." 2 years later, on a sunny Monday morning, Brenda was in her office when she received a surprising phone call. "Brenda, this is the Secretary of Education. The Secretary would like to speak with you about a national project." A week later, Brenda was in Washington, D.C., in the Secretary of Education's office. "Mrs. Johnson, we want to implement an ethics and integrity program in public schools across the country, and we would like you to coordinate this project." "Mr. Secretary, it's an honor, but a national project is something very big." "Exactly why we need someone like you, someone who has lived integrity in practice, who knows how to explain these values in a simple and genuine way." "How would it work?" "There would be classes on ethics, integrity, and citizenship, from elementary school through high school. You would train teachers across the country and oversee the implementation." "And my company? My commitments here?" "The project would be in partnership with private companies. You would continue your normal activities and dedicate part of your time to this national project." Brenda accepted the challenge. During the next 2 years, she traveled throughout the United States training teachers and speaking to students about the importance of personal and professional integrity. On one of these trips, she was at a public school in Philadelphia when a 15-year-old girl raised her hand during the presentation. "Mrs. Johnson, my mother works as a housekeeper and always says that people like us can't dream too big. How can I convince her that I'm right to want to study business administration?" Brenda smiled, remembering herself at the same age. "What's your name, dear?" "Layla." "Layla, your mother isn't wrong to be cautious. She wants to protect you from disappointments, but you can show her that big dreams are possible when accompanied by hard work and integrity." "How?" "Study hard. Be the best student you can be. Show your mother that you're serious about your goals, and never give up on your values no matter how difficult the path gets." "Do you really think I can make it?" "Layla, I'm sure, because I see in your eyes the same determination I had when I was young, and if I made it, you can too." After the presentation, Layla approached Brenda. "Mrs. Johnson, can I have your contact? I want to tell you how my studies are going." "Of course, dear." In the following years, Brenda received hundreds of messages from Layla telling her about her grades, her achievements, her difficulties. Brenda always responded with words of encouragement and practical advice. 5 years later, Brenda received a special invitation. Layla's graduation in business administration from the University of Chicago with a full scholarship for academic merit. At the graduation ceremony, Layla was chosen to speak on behalf of the class. "Fellow graduates, families, professors," Layla said into the microphone, "I want to dedicate this moment to a special person. A woman who taught me that it doesn't matter where we come from, but where we're going." Layla looked into the audience and found Brenda. "Mrs. Johnson, you once told me that big dreams are possible when accompanied by hard work and integrity. Today I can say you were right. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't yet believe in myself." Brenda cried with emotion. Seeing that girl achieving her dreams was one of the greatest rewards she could have. After the graduation, Layla approached Brenda. "Mrs. Johnson, I received a job offer at Progress. Did you know?" "Yes, I did. It was my idea. We need honest and determined people like you." "So, I'm going to work with you?" "You are, dear. And I'm sure you're going to shine brightly." Layla became one of the most promising employees at Progress, specializing in social and educational projects. She implemented programs that brought financial literacy and entrepreneurship to underprivileged communities across the country. On a Friday afternoon, 2 years after Layla was hired, Brenda was in her office when she received a call from London. "Mum, I have amazing news." "Hi, Emily. What's the news?" "I got an offer to open the company's office here in New York City, so I'm coming back to the United States." "Really? That's wonderful." "Yes, Mum, 2 years in London were incredible, but New York City is my home, and I want to continue the work you started here." "When are you coming back?" "Next month." "And Mom, I want to talk to you about a partnership between my company and Progress." "What kind of partnership?" "Corporate ethics consulting for international companies that want to set up in the United States, using Progress as an example of best practices." Brenda smiled. Emily had not only inherited her values, but had expanded them to a global scale. 1 month later, Brenda was at the airport again, but this time to welcome Emily back. When she saw her coming down the airplane stairs, she noticed how much she had matured. She was still the same caring daughter, but now with the confidence of someone who had conquered the world with integrity. "Mum, how is everyone at the company?" Emily asked on the way home. "Everyone's fine. We have a lot of new people, including a girl who will love to meet you. Layla, a brilliant administrator who came from Illinois." "Tell me more about her." Brenda told Layla's story, from the first lecture in Philadelphia to her hiring at Progress. "Mom, you're amazing. Not only did you change your own life, but you're changing the lives of people all over the United States." "Emily, I just plant seeds. It's the people who make them grow." "Mom, I want to propose something. Let's write a book together, telling your story but also talking about how to apply these values in everyday life." "A book? Emily, I barely finished college." "Mom, you have the most valuable experience there is, real life experience, and I have the technical training. Together we can create something that really helps people." Brenda thought about the proposal. Over the past 15 years, she had received thousands of messages from people inspired by her story. Perhaps a book could reach even more people. "All right, let's write this book." The book Integrity in Action: Lessons from a Real Journey was launched 2 years later and became a national bestseller. Brenda and Emily traveled across the country giving lectures and signing sessions. At one of these lectures in Chicago, a middle-aged man approached Brenda after the event. "Mrs. Brenda, my name is Charles. I'm a manager at a company here in Chicago, and I wanted to tell you something." "Of course, Charles." "A year ago, I discovered that one of my subordinates was stealing materials from the company. It was small things, but it was wrong. I thought about pretending I didn't see it, because he has a family, young kids." "And what did you do?" "I remembered your story, the courage you had to speak the truth even though you were just a cleaner. I talked to him, offered help if he was going through difficulties, but made it clear that I couldn't accept the behavior." "And what happened?" "He cried, told me he was in debt and didn't know how to solve it. We helped him renegotiate the debts, and he returned everything he had taken. Today, he's one of the most dedicated employees we have." "Charles, you did the right thing. Sometimes integrity means helping the person find the right path, not just punishing them." "That's exactly it, and I wanted to thank you for giving me the courage to act." Stories like Charles's arrived daily. Brenda realized her story had become bigger than herself. It had become a symbol that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when guided by integrity. On her 50th birthday, the Progress Company threw a surprise party for Brenda. Present were current and former employees, clients, suppliers, and even government officials. Edward Progress, now 75 years old, gave the keynote speech. "Friends, we are here to celebrate not just Brenda's birthday, but the 15 years of transformation she brought to our company and our lives. When I hired Brenda as a cleaner in 1995, I never imagined I was hiring the person who would save my company and transform our culture. She proved that leadership isn't about position but about character. Today, Progress is internationally recognized as a model of business ethics. We have offices in 5 countries, employ over 2,000 people, And all of this was built on the values Brenda taught us. But more than that, Brenda taught us that every person has value, that every voice deserves to be heard, that doing what's right is always worth it. When Edward finished, the audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted 10 minutes. Brenda moved, stepped onto the stage to respond. "My dear friends," she began, her voice choked with emotion, "you know I've never been good with fancy words, but I want to say something simple. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance to show that a cleaner can have a voice. Thank you for believing that doing what's right is worth more than any title or salary. Thank you for building this family with me, based on respect and integrity. But most of all, thank you for proving every day that there's no such thing as a small job or an insignificant person. Each of you, in what you do, contributes to something bigger than ourselves. If my story has inspired anyone, I'm happy. But I want you to know that you are also an inspiration to me. Every day I learn something new from you about courage, dedication, and kindness." After the party, Brenda was gathering her things to leave when Frank Progress approached. She hadn't seen him in over a year. "Brenda, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Frank. How are you?" "Well, thank you. I wanted to tell you that I got a better job. Financial supervisor at a medium-sized company. And, well, they know my whole story." "That's great, Frank. I'm happy for you. Brenda, I'll never be able to repay what you did for me. When you gave me that second chance, Frank, you repaid it by working honestly. That was our agreement. I want you to know that I think about the lesson you taught me every day. That true wealth isn't money. It's being able to sleep with a clear conscience." "And can you sleep well?" "Yes, I can. For the first time in many years, I can." "Then that's what matters." 5 years later, Brenda received a phone call that would once again change the course of her life. "Ms. Brenda, this is the office of the President of the United States. The President would like to meet with you to discuss a special project." A week later, Brenda was at the White House in Washington, D.C., sitting across from the country's president. "Ms. Brenda, it's an honor to meet you in person. I've followed your work for years." "The honor is mine, Mr. President. I want to make a proposal. We're creating the Department of Integrity and Transparency, an agency that will coordinate all efforts to fight corruption and promote ethics in the country, and we would like you to be the first secretary." Brenda was speechless. "Mr. President, this is something very big." "Exactly why we need someone like you, someone who has proven in practice that integrity works, who transformed a company and inspired a generation." "But I have no political experience." "Mrs. Brenda, politics is about serving the people, and you've been doing that your whole life. First serving your family, then your company, then the country's businesses, then the students. Now we want you to serve the entire nation." Brenda thought of Emily, of Progress Business Consulting Firm, of the projects she had underway. "Mr. President, I need to speak with my family and my partners before I answer." "Of course, but I sincerely hope you accept. The country needs leaders like you." That night, Brenda called Emily and told her about the proposal. "Mom, this is amazing. Are you going to accept?" "I don't know, Emily. It's a huge responsibility, and I'm afraid I won't be able to handle it." "Mom, you started as a cleaner and became a businesswoman, educator, author, speaker. If anyone can handle it, it's you. And the company? Our projects? Mom, Layla and I can take care of everything here. And who knows, maybe we can expand our corporate ethics work to public agencies too. Do you think I should accept? Mom, your whole life you've done what you thought was right, even when it was hard. What is your heart telling you now?" Brenda thought for a long moment. "It's telling me that maybe it's time to try to help the whole country." "Then you already have your answer." A week later, Brenda called the president, accepting the appointment. The swearing-in ceremony was broadcast live across the country. Millions of people watched the first black woman, a former cleaner, be sworn in as a Secretary of State. In her inaugural speech, Brenda was direct and simple. "Fellow citizens, I take this office with humility and determination. I know many may question whether a former cleaner has the ability for this position, and I say It's precisely because I was a cleaner that I understand the importance of honesty in work. For 15 years, I cleaned offices and observed how corruption can destroy companies and harm working families. Now I want to use that experience to clean corruption from our country. I don't promise miracles. I promise hard work, total transparency, and the same commitment to integrity I've always had. Together we will show that the United States can be an example of ethics for the world. In the following 2 years, as Secretary of Integrity and Transparency, Brenda implemented revolutionary programs. She created direct reporting channels for citizens, implemented surprise audits in all public agencies, and established partnerships with private companies to promote transparency. The results were impressive. Corruption in public agencies fell 60% in 2 years. The United States rose 15 positions in the global transparency ranking. And more importantly, the population regained some trust in institutions. One Friday afternoon, Brenda was in her office in Washington, D.C., when she received a special visit. It was Layla, who now ran Progress alongside Emily. "Madam Secretary, I have exciting news." "What news, Layla?" "The United Nations wants to invite you to be the global ambassador for corporate integrity. It would be a position you would take up after finishing your term as secretary." "Global ambassador?" "Yes. The UN wants to create a global business ethics program based on the American model you developed. It would be based in New York but with travel all over the world." Brenda thought about the proposal. At 55, she had the energy and experience for a global challenge. "And you at the company? How will that work?" "Madam Secretary, the company is solid, with a strong culture. Emily and I are continuing the work you started. And who knows, in the future, when you return, we might work together again. Layla, you and Emily are my greatest pride. Seeing you carry these values forward, we learned from the best teacher." 2 years later, Brenda Johnson became the first global ambassador for corporate integrity at the United Nations. From her office in New York, she coordinated business ethics programs in over 50 countries. Her story had become a case study in universities worldwide. Books were written about her journey, documentaries were produced, and her corporate ethics implementation methodology was used by multinational companies. But for Brenda, the most important thing wasn't the titles or recognition. The most important thing was the messages she received daily from ordinary people who had been inspired by her story to do the right thing in their own lives. In one such message, received on a Tuesday morning, it read, "Dear Ambassador Brenda, my name is Anne. I'm a cleaner at a hospital in Canada. I watched a documentary about your life and wanted to tell you that yesterday I saw a nurse stealing medication. I thought about staying quiet, afraid of losing my job. But I remembered your story and decided to speak with the supervisor. We discovered he was selling the medication to buy drugs. We managed to help him get treatment and saved the lives of patients who might have gone without medicine. Thank you for teaching me that doing what's right is always worth it. Anne, New York." Brenda kept the letter tenderly, as she did with all the others. Each one represented a small victory of integrity over indifference, of courage over fear, of hope over despair. That same day, she received a call from Emily. "Mom, I have amazing news." "What news, daughter?" "I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother." Brenda felt her eyes well up with joy. "Emily, how wonderful. How are you?" "I'm great. And Mom, I want you to know that my son or daughter will grow up knowing their grandmother's story. They'll know that it doesn't matter where we come from, but what we do with the opportunities life gives us." "Emily, this baby is already blessed to have you as a mother, and to have you as a grandmother." 8 months later, Brenda was back in the United States for the birth of her first grandchild. Peter Baker Johnson was born on a sunny December morning, surrounded by love and expectations. Holding the boy in her arms for the first time, Brenda made a silent promise. She would do everything she could to leave a more honest and just world for this new life. "Peter," she whispered, "when you grow up, I want you to know that the most important thing in life isn't what we get for ourselves, but what we manage to do for others. That true wealth lies in sleeping with a clear conscience, that there's no small job or insignificant person, and that doing what's right is always worth it, even when it's hard. Emily watched her mother with her grandson, moved. Mom, you've always been my hero, but now, seeing you with Peter, I know he's going to have the wisest and most honest grandmother in the world. Emily, my journey wasn't just about me. It was about all of us, about proving that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when guided by the right values. And now Peter will grow up in this world you helped create, a world where integrity is valued, where people have a voice, where doing what's right is the norm, not the exception. 2 years later, Brenda was concluding her term as UN ambassador when she received a final proposal that moved her deeply. Harvard University invited her to be a visiting professor for 1 year, teaching a course on ethical leadership in practice. It would be the first time the prestigious university created a chair based entirely on practical experience, without requiring a doctorate or traditional academic research. "Professor Johnson," said the Dean of Harvard during the conversation, "we want our students to learn that leadership isn't just taught in books, but learned in real life. But I don't have a doctorate. You have something better, a real story of transformation through integrity. Our students can read about ethics in hundreds of books, but they can only learn about moral courage from someone who has lived it in practice." Brenda's course at Harvard University became the most sought after at the university. Young people from all over the world wanted to learn from the woman who had transformed a company, inspired a nation, and changed the global debate on corporate ethics. In her inaugural lecture to a packed auditorium of 500 students, Brenda was direct. "Students, you came here expecting to learn complex theories about leadership. I'm going to disappoint you. There are no complex theories. There's only one simple question you should ask every day. Is what I'm doing right? If the answer is yes, move forward. If it's no, change direction. Simple as that. You will leave here and take leadership positions in major companies. You will have power over the lives of thousands of people. Use that power to make a positive difference in the world." A student raised his hand. "Professor, but what about when doing what's right could harm our career?" "Excellent question. Let me tell you a story. 20 years ago, I was a cleaner who had 2 options: stay silent about a corruption I discovered, or speak up and risk losing my job. I chose to speak up. If I had stayed silent, I would still be a cleaner today. There's nothing wrong with being a cleaner, but I would have missed the chance to make a bigger difference. By speaking up, I risked everything, but I gained the opportunity to transform not only my life, but the lives of thousands of people." Doing what's right sometimes seems harmful in the short term, but in the long term it's always worth it. During that year at Harvard University, Brenda mentored dozens of students who became leaders in companies around the world, all carrying with them the values of integrity they learned from her. At the end of her term as a visiting professor, Brenda decided it was time to return permanently to the United States. At 60 years old, she wanted to be close to her family and contribute directly to the development of the country that had always been her home. Progress, now run by Emily and Layla, had become a multinational with offices in 10 countries, but it maintained its headquarters in New York City and its culture based on the values Brenda had implemented 2 decades earlier. "Mom," said Emily during a family lunch, "we want to make a proposal. How about we work together again?" "How so?" "We want to create a foundation, the Brenda Johnson Foundation for Integrity and Social Development. It would focus on education, first jobs for young people from underprivileged communities, and ethics programs." "And what would I do?" "You would be the president. You would use all your experience to create opportunities for people like you once were." Brenda liked the idea. It would be a chance to come full circle, to use everything she had learned to help others follow similar paths. The Brenda Johnson Foundation was officially created 6 months later, with funding from the Progress Business Consulting firm, donations from business leaders, and support from the federal government. The main focus was identifying talented young people in underprivileged communities and giving them opportunities for education and first jobs. But the Foundation's most special project was the Integrity in Practice program, where low-income youth were hired to work part-time at partner companies while studying. All underwent intensive training, on professional ethics and values. "We want to show that talent exists everywhere," Brenda explained in interviews. "Only opportunities are lacking. And we want to prove that young people educated in solid values become exceptional professionals." The results were impressive. In 5 years, more than 10,000 young people had gone through the Foundation's programs. The employment rate was 95%, and many already held leadership positions in their companies. One Monday morning, Brenda was in her office at the Foundation when she received a visit from a young woman that moved her deeply. "Mrs. Johnson, my name is Caitlin. I participated in the Foundation's program 3 years ago." "Hi, Caitlin. I remember you. How are you?" "Very well. I wanted to tell you that I was just promoted to manager at the company where I work, and I wanted to thank you." "Caitlin, the credit is all yours." "No, Mrs. Johnson. The credit goes to the values I learned here. Last week, I discovered my supervisor was inflating reports to get bigger bonuses. I immediately thought of you and spoke with the board." "And what happened?" "They thanked me for my honesty, corrected the situation, and promoted me to his position. They said they needed people with integrity and leadership. Caitlin, you did the right thing and you were rewarded for it. That's exactly what you always taught us. Doing what's right always pays off." Stories like Caitlin's repeated themselves constantly. Brenda realized she had created a virtuous cycle. Young people educated in ethical values became leaders who valued integrity, creating fairer work environments that in turn attracted and developed more honest people. On her 70th birthday, the Brenda Johnson Foundation organized a special celebration. Present were alumni of the programs, partner entrepreneurs, government officials, and hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by Brenda's work. Peter, now 8 years old, took the stage to speak about his grandmother. "My grandma always tells me that the most important thing isn't being rich or famous, but being a good person. She teaches me that we should always help others and never lie. Never. When I grow up, I want to be like her, someone who does good for everyone." The audience was moved by the boy's simple and sincere words. When it was Brenda's turn to speak, she looked at the crowd and remembered the shy girl she had been, the young single mother struggling to survive, the cleaning woman who faced daily humiliations. "My dear friends," she began, "if someone had told me 50 years ago that I would be here today, surrounded by so much love and affection, I wouldn't have believed it. Not because I didn't dream big, but because I couldn't imagine how it would be possible. Today, I know it was possible because I discovered a simple secret. When we do what's right, the universe conspires in our favor. Not in a magical way, but in a practical one. Honest people attract honest people. Honest work generates real opportunities. Moral courage inspires others to be courageous." Every person in this room is proof that it doesn't matter where we come from. What matters is what we do with the opportunities we receive and how we use those opportunities to create chances for others. If my story has served as inspiration for anyone, I'm happy. But I want you to know that you are also an inspiration to me. Every day I learn something new about kindness, determination, and hope by looking at you. And now, at 70 years old, I can say with certainty, life is worth living when it's lived with purpose, integrity, and love. Thank you for being part of this incredible journey. The ovation lasted 15 minutes. Brenda looked at the audience and saw faces of all ages, colors, and socio-economic backgrounds. She saw young people who had found their first job through the Foundation, entrepreneurs who had changed their practices after hearing her talks, politicians who implemented more transparent policies, teachers who used her story to teach values to children. In that moment, she understood that her journey had been much greater than a personal transformation. She had been part of a social transformation, a quiet yet powerful movement that proved integrity is not just a moral value, but a life strategy that works. 3 years later, at 73, Brenda decided to write her complete memoirs. From the ground up, A Journey of Integrity became a publishing phenomenon, translated into 20 languages and used as a textbook in universities worldwide. In the book's dedication, she wrote, "For Emily, who taught me what unconditional love is. For Peter, who represents the hope of a better future. for all the young people who have gone through the Foundation's programs and proved that talent has no address, for the invisible workers of the United States who keep the country running with dignity, and for everyone who believes that doing what is right is worth it, even when the world says otherwise. The book launch coincided with another special moment. Peter, now 11, had been accepted into the same scholarship program where Emily had studied decades earlier. "Grandma," Peter said during the celebration dinner, "when I grow up, I want to continue our family's work. I want to help people like you always have." "Peter, you already help by being a good kid and studying hard. But if you want to dedicate your life to helping others when you grow up, know that you'll have all my support." "Grandma, why do you think it's important to help people?" Brenda thought about her grandson's question. How to explain to an 11-year-old concepts that had taken her a lifetime to fully understand. "Peter, do you know that everything in the world is connected? When we help someone, that person becomes happier and can help others. It's like throwing a stone in the water. It creates waves that spread everywhere. And when we don't help, or when we harm someone, we also create waves, but bad waves that spread sadness and difficulties. So, if everyone helped everyone, the world would be better." "Exactly, Peter. That's the most important secret I can teach you. We all have the power to make the world a little better or a little worse. The choice is ours." 2 years later, when Brenda was 75, she received a call that filled her with pride. "Grandma, I have news," said Peter, now 13. "What news, my love?" "I created a project at school. We're going to collect school supplies for children in need. And guess the name of the project?" "No, what is it?" "Waves of Kindness. Remember our conversation about waves?" Brenda smiled, her eyes welling up with emotion. "Yes, I remember, Peter, and I'm very proud of you." The principal said if it works, we'll expand to other schools. "Can I use the Foundation's name?" "Of course you can. Even better. How about we talk with your mum and Aunt Layla about turning this into an official Foundation program?" The Waves of Kindness project became a reality 6 months later. Peter, even though he was a minor, was named special consultant and participated in planning meetings. The project quickly spread to schools across the United States. Children and teenagers created local solidarity initiatives, from collecting supplies to visiting nursing homes, cleaning up parks and tutoring classmates who were struggling. "Peter," Brenda said during a Foundation meeting, "you've created something amazing. You're teaching your generation that doing good is normal and natural." "I learned from the best teacher, Grandma." "Peter, you didn't just learn from me, you have it inside you. It's part of who you are." At 77, Brenda received her last major institutional honor, the title of Honorary World Citizen, bestowed by the United Nations General Assembly. It was the first time an American woman had received such an honor. The ceremony was held in New York at the UN headquarters. Representatives from 195 countries were present. Brenda stepped onto the podium dressed simply, as she always did, and addressed the assembly in Portuguese with simultaneous translation. "Distinguished representatives from all nations of the world," she began, "I accept this honor not as Brenda Johnson, but on behalf of all honest workers across the planet, of all mothers fighting for their children, of all who do what's right even when no one is watching. Throughout my life, I've learned that integrity has no nationality, color, or religion. It's a universal value that unites all people of goodwill. If my story has touched hearts around the world, it's because it proves a simple truth. All of us, no matter our background, have the power to make a difference. The power to choose between right and wrong. The power to be the change we wish to see in the world. I'll return to the United States with this honor, but knowing that it belongs to all Americans who work honestly every day to build a better country. And most importantly, it belongs to future generations, like my grandson Peter, who will continue this work when I'm no longer here. May we leave for our children and grandchildren a world where integrity isn't the exception, but the rule. Where doing what's right is celebrated, not punished. Where every person knows their voice matters, their life has value, and their dreams are possible." The assembly rose in a 10-minute standing ovation. Experienced diplomats later confessed they had rarely been so moved during a UN session. On the flight back to the United States, Brenda looked out the airplane window and thought about her entire journey. From a poor girl who dropped out of school to work, to a woman honored by the United Nations, from a young single mother who didn't know how to pay the bills, to a successful businesswoman, from a cleaning lady humiliated daily to a state minister respected worldwide. But she knew the most important things weren't the titles or honors. The most important were the lives she had touched, the opportunities she had created for others, the values she had helped spread around the world. When the plane landed in New York City, Peter was waiting at the airport with a sign that said, "Welcome, world's most amazing grandma." Brenda laughed and cried at the same time, remembering how the small moments of love were infinitely more valuable than the grand ceremonies. End of story. And so Brenda Johnson proved that no dream is too small or person too insignificant to make a difference in the world. Her journey continues to inspire millions of people to believe that doing what's right is always worth it, and that integrity is the most precious value we can cultivate and pass on to future generations. Now tell us, what did you think of this inspiring story? Which moment touched your heart the most? Do you know someone who, like Brenda, had the courage to do what was right even while facing difficulties? Share your reflections in the comments. We love reading your honest opinions. If this story moved you, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that will touch your soul.